and I was told this, that you can see in that video Michael Aquino and Rob Reiner.
Oh, really?
Were present there, and that that whole murder was a satanic sacrifice. And what do you think, Mack?
Well, I'd never heard that one before, but
right.
It would certainly make sense because you had a death right there in front of the stage. It never occurred to me that it might have been planned as a sacrifice, and I certainly couldn't discount it. And, I would love to see the footage that you're talking about. I mean, I've seen the Altamont film, but if you got Michael Aquino in the shot, then that would raise the level of synchronicity a little bit too high.
Yeah. I have not seen the footage myself, but I was told at a seminar by a questioner who brought it up and told me about this. And it makes sense because also, too, I know that from Doug that Michael Aquino used to drive around in a dune buggy. Mm-hmm. Right around the same time when the Manson family suddenly had these dune buggies.
And walkie-talkies.
At field telephones.
Yeah.
And Charlie idolized Rommel. How did a cat that was a country bumpkin suddenly know about a military tactician? Mm-hmm. Think about that.
You know, Charlie came out of Boys Town.
Boys Town.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Boys Town, which has this dark connection to the Franklin cover-up and Bohemian Grove and so forth.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
man, I got my own thing about Charlie. I know he's a bad dude and he's admitted to killing people, but he still tells the truth in his interviews. If you listen to him, he openly admits that he was set up by people to be the reason that it's brought down, and that he acts like he's crazy to make people discredit him. You know what I'm saying? In his own sense, I wouldn't say he's a sociopath because he has like an ability to create, but at the same time, he's a bad person. He should never be let go. He should never be free or anything. But he does talk a lot about like truth. Like he really does like speak about the truth because he knows he has nothing to lose. He's been set on fire in prison. Like he knows he's going to die in prison. He'll never be free. But at the same time, he should never be free. Like, we all know that he should never be free. You know what I'm saying? He killed Shorty Shea. There's no doubt about it that he killed Shorty Shea. Whether or not you believe in Helter Skelter, he killed Shorty Shea. He's admitted that he hit him over the fucking head. And crushed his head with a wrench, you know? But at the same time, like, if you listen to him, it's like seeing one of the elites pinned and forced to confess in cryptic language.
Right.
That's my opinion on him.
He also shot that guy from the escort service that he was partners in, and they went to that guy, and they said the bullet was still in him. And it was the same gun that was used over at the Manson, the Tate and LaBianca murders.
And Tex Watson was like a Timothy McVeigh type.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know, let's see.
There are no pictures of Tex Watson with any kind of long hair or anything looking like a hippie until after he's arrested. You know? Mm-hmm. Months after the murders.
Tex Watson was a rip-and-run man. You know what I'm saying? He robbed people for drugs. He was a CIA plant. Mm-hmm. He knew he was working against the mob. That's what he did. He robbed Joel Rothstein. He robbed Jay Sebring's secretary 4 months before the murders happened.
Oh, really?
Everyone knew that this guy was a guy that took speed. You know what I'm saying? And things like that. He didn't believe in, like, Helter Skelter or anything like that. He was there to steal drugs from people. That was Tex Watson's thing. You know what I'm saying? He was a CIA plant there to steal drugs and take information from people. And he knew that Jay Sebring and Wojtek Frykowski were part of the Genovese crime family. They were laundering money. And isn't it weird, if you look at it, Jay Sebring, Rosemary LaBianca, Jay Sebring, and Tex Watson all owned either hair salons or wig stores within that period between 67 and 69. All of them used those for drug fronts. All that was going on in Hollywood. The Whiskey A Go-Go, all of those clubs were used to launder mob money. That's really what it was used for. The CIA was looking into it. There's rumors that the LaBianca's house were tapped by the FBI or the CIA, I forget. I'm pretty sure it's the CIA, because they were trying to track a luggage robbery ring that went to JFK Airport, which was used to launder money to Universal and Paramount Pictures, which Robert Evans was convicted for the Cotton Club murders and for being connected to the mob. All of that. Robert Evans and Jack Nicholson were the people that were the first people to the Tate LaBianca murder scene. They, probably cleaned it up and things like that, if you think about it. Think about that, Ed. Vincent Bugliosi was tied up with the JFK assassination and the Manson.
Robert Evans was only convicted of a small cocaine possession. He wasn't convicted of any murders or anything like that. He's still out right now walking around for free.
That's so funny that you...
But didn't he know the people, or didn't he, help set up the Cotton Club murders, though?
It was definitely, there was no conviction whatsoever.
But what's the deal with Bugliosi? Was he a cover?
Well, Bugliosi famously tied to both the JFK investigation and Charles Manson. Those are both two monumental, cultural shifts in American consciousness. There's a lot of weird things with Bugliosi. He always denies the mob in both the JFK and both the Charles Manson thing too.
Right.
I mean, no diss on Bugliosi, you know what I'm saying? Helter Skelter's an amazing book, one of the best books I've ever read on crime investigation. It's so well laid out and well written. So,
Yeah, it is. I read it a long time ago. Yeah, but it seems like he kind of whitewashes some stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's what I was wondering, what the deal was with him.
Well,
and also that whole trial with Manson.
There's that famous quote, if you read into The Family by Ed Sanders, where the set dresser for The Fearless Vampire Killers by Roman Polanski, his name escapes me right now, his first quote that was printed in the newspapers were, toilets are flushing all over Hollywood. You guys know that quote, right?
I don't know.
No, I never heard that.
You guys crack open The Family, Ed, after we get off the air, and look for it. There's a quote that toilets are flushing all over, Beverly Hills or Los Angeles, one of those neighborhoods, because everyone at the time assumed that it was a drug deal gone wrong. Right. And they were flushing their drugs, because they knew that Tex Watson had robbed somebody and it had been wrong. Everyone, those people all knew each other. That's what gets covered up after the fact, because all of it was tied together. The CIA, the Mafia, all of these things were clashing, Laurel Canyon, all of these people knew each other in some weird way, but it wanted to be, people wanted to cover it up from the public. You know what I'm saying? It was just interpersonal conflict of evil people, weird people, bad people, all just smashing together. It was bound to happen in one form or another in the 60s, the same year that the White Album came out, all that stuff. It was just a bad time. All of these bad things happened at the same time. If it wasn't them, someone else would have been on the news. Years later, the Hollywood Land thing came out, and it was about drugs and, all that thing. I mean, it's just a weird place to be, in Los Angeles, San Francisco, all that area is just so, I don't know, all the serial killers come from there. It seems like in that time. There were so many serial killers. I mean, Mr. McGowan was right about that stuff.
The viciousness of the crimes, I mean, they were very bloody. I mean, carving things into the bodies and writing, stuff in blood on the walls, pigs and, all the stuff that they were, I mean, it was definitely a terrorist kind of a, it was a ritualized murder scene that was really meant to frighten.
The shock trauma, the MK Ultra shock trauma.
Mm-hmm. And then to parade Manson around like that with the girls, and for the judge to put it was such a spectacle, the trial. You know what I mean? That he should have been, manacled to the chair. The judge really allowed him to kind of play up to the whole, really make a spectacle of himself, and they really, gave him a platform.
Yeah, platform.
Well, if you read on the trial transcripts, the one point where they actually let him speak in his own place, they cleared the entire room. They cleared the jury and the audience, and let only the defense and the prosecutors hear it, and then they pulled everyone back in. I mean, I in no way support Charles Manson, as a person or anything like that, but it's just so interesting that they picked this bumpkin out of anybody, and he's still living. Apparently he's going to get married and all this, stuff. I mean, why would they need a boogeyman, but they want to be able to say that they can keep a boogeyman behind bars? You know what I'm saying? It's that in itself is an entire psyop of its own, to me.
Yeah.
Definitely. And how many times was Lennon shot? That was what was in question, was that there was, 7 shots fired?
No, the gun holds 5 bullets, and there's at least 8 bullet holes. There's bullets, in his body. There's bullet holes in glass windows. But there could be as many as 10 bullet holes.
That's odd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't he have a revolver?
Yeah, it's a 5-shot revolver. What were we going to say, Mack?
How could he even gotten off 10 shots? That reeks of something wicked happening.
Yeah, Rod Harrell does great work on this. And you got to look up the video. It's on YouTube called "Conspiracy of Silence." There's really good evidence that there was another shooter there with a silencer from a different angle in that vestibule with the entrance to the Dakota. And it makes sense. And the other shooter probably could have been one of the other doormen or security guards or the maintenance people that were in that area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they want to make sure that the target dies.
Right.
And now, as I understand it, Chapman was a good shot. I mean, he could really handle a gun. And this brings to mind something that I remember. This was on a TV documentary that I think came out in the early 90s. And I used to have a DHS copy of this documentary, and now I don't have it anymore, and I wish I knew the title of this documentary and so forth. But it wasn't necessarily promoting the idea of conspiracy, but the fascinating thing that stood out in this documentary, and I hope I can find out sometime the title of it and who produced it. But there were a lot of interviews in this documentary with Chapman's family. And what emerged from this investigation was that, according to his family, Chapman at some point began to hang out with an Alabama highway patrolman, and they were buddies. They were always,
Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, okay, Georgia, and that it was due to this cop, this Georgia cop that he would hang out with, that he began to, develop an interest in firearms, and they would go shooting together and so forth. And the family at the time worried about the influence of this cop on Chapman. And that I always found really interesting because it suggested that this might have been the individual that first spotted Chapman, sort of like David Ferry, who supposedly was the one who brought Oswald into the intelligence community when they met in the Civil Air Patrol in New Orleans. That you had an older man taking a younger man who, under his wing.
Well, Mack, Chapman couldn't buy bullets in New York, which in 76 it was not that hard to buy bullets in New York. But according to the story, he could not buy them in New York and went to Atlanta to this cop and got the bullets from him. But on the other hand, have you heard the story about how it said that Chapman gave these hollow point bullets as a gift to Kenneth Anger?
No, I've never heard that one.
Oh,
Kenneth
yeah.
Anger, wow.
Yeah, man.
Now, when and how did that supposedly occur?
I've never heard that, Ed. Bobby Beausoleil from the Manson Family stole the
Kenneth Anger
original
movie.
footage. He stole the original footage of Lucifer Rising from Kenneth Anger and took it out into Death Valley and buried it where the Manson family could find it. He was the guitar player from Love. He killed Gary Hinman. He was in Kenneth Anger's movies as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Continue though. I'm sorry, man. Sorry for interrupting that. I just thought I'd throw that trivia in there.
So they were indeed hollow points that he was supposedly shot with.
No, that's under question because it would be impossible for hollow points to go through a glass door. There's 3 shots that went through the glass doorway of the security office.
Okay.
They wouldn't be able to pass through, and if there were hollow points, it's impossible.
Right. So that's odd.
Yeah.
So when and how did Chapman supposedly give these hollow point bullets to Kenneth Anger? What was the context of that?
I'm not sure.
Huh. Well,
isn't it interesting to note that later on, hollow points became the scapegoat, the cop killer bullet as well?
Yeah. There's no solid evidence of hollow point bullets other than a statement by Chapman himself and Chapman's uncle that they were hollow points. Otherwise, the ballistics themselves, there's no evidence whatsoever. Because a bullet passed through Lennon and landed in his jacket. Bullets passed through glass doors, and went somewhere.
Because he exited the limo. And I'm assuming it was Yoko exited first.
Yoko was way ahead of him, yeah.
So that was her version of the story, right? And she said he was straggling behind, and supposedly he had met up with Chapman before they went out, and then he encounters him again, and then all of a sudden he's shot from behind, and he stumbles up a few steps or something. And the doorman then tackles Chapman. Isn't that supposedly the official story? Something like that? Or does he empty the gun?
No, the gun's empty. There's 5 shots fired from the gun, but there's 10 bullet evidence of bullets hitting people. Hitting both Lennon and hitting in his clothing, and also hitting walls and stuff like that. There's all over the place.
So Lennon hit from behind.
From different trajectories, too, by the way. But also, too, there's also many original news reports that there was a group with Lennon. It was Lennon, a group of friends, and Yoko.
Okay.
Yeah, and then who were these friends? No one knows. This is a really weird story because there's no people who come forward and say, "Oh yeah, I knew Chapman, I knew this, I knew that." Nothing. It never comes out.
Right.
You know.
Except you met a Chapman.
Yeah, but none of that stuff I was involved with the whole Sarah Palin thing too. That's not out either. You know? Mm-hmm. It's just as silent as this thing is.
Huh. Well, so you're saying that this was a group of friends that were riding in the limo with John and Yoko.
Yeah, there was a group.
Okay. Well, I've never heard that one before, and that's an early report that then just disappeared.
Right.
And you would think, though, that if there were these friends, that they would have been interviewed and their names would be known, and it would have been part of the story as we know it. But they just suddenly vanish.
But you know, Paul Gorish, that photographer guy, he's changed his story.
What way?
Well, he started out saying that Chapman was this friendly guy who was out in front, and Chapman went out to dinner with these two girls he met out in front, you know. And then later on, around 2010, he started saying, "Oh yeah, I confronted Chapman, and we had a fight, we had a dispute, and then later on we made up." You know, he changed his story.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, that's
he told two different stories.
Well, that's usually an indicator of something false.
Yeah.
Was he insinuating like he could have prevented it or something like that? He was saying that he was nervous with the girls, or that there was some sort of indicator that something bad was going to happen before that. And then they made that movie with Jared Leto playing Chapman, and in the movie he's pacing back and forth, and he's kind of having a conversation inside of his head saying,
"Right,
oh, it's nice," and he signed the autograph. No, you can't do it. And then he's like, "No, you got to." And then you know, and I didn't see the movie, but I've seen that scene, and they portray it like that he's having this internal conflict. And he's like, "Yeah, he was nice. He signed the album for you, and just go home and forget about it." And then, of course, the darker side wins out, and he goes back.
Yeah. The added, occult significance, that movie is called Chapter 23.
Oh, boy.
And Jared Leto, he's in some other stuff, too, isn't he?
He's a sick dude. He on interviews advocates the population reduction. He'll just say it. They won't ask him. He'll just start talking about how useless eaters and how people need to need to be culled, and there's too many people. I mean, he's a really out there kind of a guy, a really unlikable,
And it's significant to me for such an important topic that movie was not promoted at all. And Jared Leto went full on Robert De Niro, Raging Bull method actor thing and gained an insane amount of weight just to portray a person like Mark David Chapman. I mean, actually, in all offense, man, Mark David Chapman is not anyone that anyone should like at all. I love John Lennon, come on. So, for something like that to be put out there, it just adds into the terrible black hole that they tried to create around a person like John Lennon, who in and of himself, I've always thought among the Beatles, John Lennon was the literal soul. He was the passion. When you heard John Lennon sing Twist and Shout, or, even Run for Your Life, you knew John Lennon was singing from his heart. Paul McCartney was more like the Mozart. George Harrison was more like the Ravi Shankar type. He was quiet, and, Ringo was a good, really in the pocket, he knew his place, he knew his own thing, and he knew he was going to make a good amount of money, with it. But John Lennon, he was really the soul of the Beatles, so to glorify the assassin of the soul of the Beatles is really a kick in the face, in my opinion.
Yeah. And what was his motive? You know, everybody else, whether it's the Lee Harvey Oswald story or the Timothy McVeigh or wherever the Patsy story is, you know, it's flimsy at best. With Chapman, what was his motive? That he wanted to be one with him, or you know, if he killed him, he'd be synonymous with him. What was the motive?
That he was,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me go back into my idea of them trying to create an occult significance around John Lennon and the mystique of the Beatles would be for him as a person, all right, he might have spoke out of turn and said the Beatles were bigger than Jesus, but then you have later on in his career, all right, he's associated with a mass murderer in Charles Manson. Later on, he's tried to be deported and all these things, and then for him to get killed by a supposed mindless follower and things like that, or a mind-controlled person or anything like that, that adds more significance to it. They're trying to tell you that all of these things happen for a reason, you know, and it's just rubbing your face into it.
Yeah. Well, let me add one thing.
That's the overarching thing. Sorry, Ed.
No, the theory was that Chapman wanted Lennon's fame, you know, that he would become famous by this. But the cops said he didn't want any kind of press whatsoever. He didn't want to talk to the press. He didn't want any kind of publicity whatsoever. And they allowed him to call his wife in Hawaii and tell her, oh, be careful because the press is going to come and want to talk to you. The idea that someone would do a big political murder like this, even in the 70s,
yeah,
and they would allow you to make a phone call to an associate, a Confederate, to your wife, she could be in on it. Give her a code word to go kill someone in Hawaii. You know, who knows? It's crazy.
It makes, that's really, really, you know, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. She could have been a co-conspirator.
Right.
And they let him call her to actually, he could have been protecting her. You know what I mean? I mean, that
unheard of. Even in the 70s, that wasn't the 70s, that was the 80s.
It was the 80s.
Yeah, so forget it. By then, forget it.
He said, and that was the cryptic line that he said. He goes, the 70s were a bummer. He goes, but let's make the 80s, you know, great. And then...
Ooh, that's some evil speak. That's evil.
Mm-hmm. Because what was it, 1980? 81?
Yeah, 1980.
Yeah, 1980.
Exactly. The decade that was marked by the complete reversal of anything John Lennon wanted. Mass consumerism, rebirth of imperialism, wars fought over islands that no one wanted, you know, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to add...
No, go ahead, Mack.
Yeah, I was going to add that you mentioned phone calls to Chapman's wife, and it reminded me, I read somewhere that the police made a phone call to her, urging her not to release any photographs of Chapman.
Really?
And that always seemed a strange thing right there, that the police were trying to manage, of all things, photos of the Chapman. I don't know what that means, but it's really peculiar.
Well, it might have been because they were trying to get more money for the photos that they had.
Yeah, okay.
But the other thing, too, is like within an hour, first of all, they were calling him a local kook, a local nut. You know, he wasn't local. He was from Hawaii. But then also, too, within a couple of hours, they knew about that he was seeing a psychiatrist in Hawaii, that he had mental illness problems. The whole thing, it stinks to high heaven. The whole police.
And then later on, not too much later, the other musician, because the other Beatles said we had heard of political people being assassinated, but we had never heard of a musician being shot, so we were very shocked. And then Bob Marley gets shot and was supposed to have died. They shot him about 4 times. And, you know, that was the next one, because he was kind of pushing the bounds of politics, in that region. It was actually Peter Tosh that told him to start getting more political, and I guess they were just.
It's interesting to note that even a person with an Ital diet died of cancer. Like, right. I mean, anyone with half a brain knows that a person like Bob Marley, whether you agree with the diet of an indigenous, like, people such as what he supported with Rastafarianism, I mean, like, really, cancer like that does not just come out of the blue. Like, anyone with half a brain realizes, like, the natural development of the carcinoma.
There's a whole interesting background story on Bob Marley's cancer, which I believe is covered in this book by Alice Constantine, the Covert War on Rock.
Yes.
There's a special chapter there devoted to Marley. And cancer, interestingly, was preceded by a visit to Jamaica, to his home, by a big fan of his who happened to be the son of the former CIA director, William Colby.
Yep.
And he presented a pair of boots as a gift to Marley. And, later, when Marley put on the boots, he cried out in pain. And what was it? It took the boot off, and some of his friends were there, and they examined the boot. And there was a strange-looking piece of wire that connected from the toe of the boot into about where the big toe would have been. And the suspicion or the allegation here is that this was some means of transmitting cancer.
Right. Because it started on his toe.
Yeah. And another odd thing that came out of this same research was that Colby's ex-wife happened to have been a next-door neighbor to Nicole Simpson, and supposedly heard some things, on the night of the murders, the famous O.J. Simpson case, and was allowed to testify in the O.J. Simpson case anonymously. So.
Yeah, but wait, Mac. Colby's son was living in that house too.
Mm-hmm.
I believe so.
Yeah, right. Maybe they were ex-wives by the time the trial started, but Colby's son was living next door to O.J. Simpson's wife as well. And when O.J., in that tape where you hear O.J. screaming and yelling about Zalamovich, it was Colby's son who was hiding in the closet.
I didn't know that. But,
oh, yeah.
I'll tell you, that Colby family is one to watch out for. It was William Colby. I mentioned, earlier that I'd done some research with Waco back in '92. After that happened, I was involved in the making of this documentary, The Day 51, The True Story of Waco. I interviewed with Branch Davidians, and one of the things that we learned about that first year after the big Holocaust there in Waco was that so many of the surviving Branch Davidians, they would have survived, but they ran out the back of the building, the side of the building that was facing away from the cameras, and they were gunned down by FBI sniper fire. Well, when we put out that documentary in '93, there wasn't any photographic evidence of this, but a few years later, the film Waco Rules of Engagement was released, in which there was included this satellite footage that proved that there were shots fired from these a couple of buildings on that side of the main building there at Waco. Well, it came out that footage was released by William Colby, who at that time was an ex-CIA director. He leaked the footage. And interestingly, about a year or two later, William Colby dies in a mysterious canoeing accident on the Potomac River.
Right.
And, one of many, bizarre chains of strange circumstances. But
well, Mack. Gordon Novell was working for Ramsey Clark, who was the attorney in that Waco case.
That's right, Gordon Novell, who was a likely Oswald double.
yeah, right.
or he was the
there were a
guy
bunch of Oswalds running
sitting next to the umbrella.
Right.
He was the umbrella man, yeah. And he was all over Waco. I mean, and wasn't it Gordon Novell who, late in his career, before he died, was hired by the Michael Jackson family?
Oh, really?
I believe it was. Yes, to look into certain things. I forget the details of this, but in the events leading up to, the or surrounding the pedophile scandal of Michael Jackson, the family hired Gordon Novell, and he did some kind of investigative work for them with regard to that. All these things.
Are you sure Gordon Novell, or you're thinking of Anthony Falcano?
I'm pretty sure it was Gordon Novell.
I have to look into that
to make sure of, but I believe it was. He just had a way of turning up in the strangest circumstances.
Oh yeah, and he had a lot of dirt on a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's very interesting, Mac, that that you had that involvement with Waco, because that's one of my pet peeves. I always try to explain to people, when they try to get a baseline for where all of this, sort of stuff happened, and especially with the Patriot movement in the 90s. And I always tell them, it was Ruby Ridge, and that whole thing with Randy Weaver, and then, they attacked that. That was a church, and they kept calling it a compound, and basically they were like Seventh-day Adventists, and they were going to church, and the children were in the daycare center, and the women that were watching the children, if I have it correct, they didn't, they fired, and they let the BATF agents actually collect their, injured personnel, and they were very civilized in the way that it had happened. They were defending themselves. I mean, they were under siege, and there was no evidence of any kind of child abuse. Then they said, the reason is because of mass suicide. Well, first of all, they didn't have any jurisdiction to go in there under any of those circumstances, whether it was for child protection, whether it was for mass suicide. And then what? The answer for mass suicide is, we're going to kill them all? There ain't going to be no mass suicide in this country. We're going to go in and make sure they're all dead. The other thing, too, was I believe that they were trying to say Koresh claimed that he was I mean, it's just you'll see it every once in a while. They'll put it on and they'll on a History Channel episode, and they'll put him next to like a Jim Jones and other people. And, it's wrong. He doesn't belong there. That was not what happened there. And, I didn't see the documentary. I saw the Waco Rules of Engagement. And, if you really want to see somebody that's despicable, Chucky Schmucky Schumer, who's still in office, which is why I support term limits, he was just, if you watch that, it's just awful the way that he slanders the people. And, I didn't even want to get started with the whole Waco thing because it makes me so angry.
Christian, man. I'm sorry for shortening your name like that. That's
no,
unfair. Everything that you're saying, I mean, I agree with right on. God bless those children, women, and men that died there. I mean, it's completely unjust. You've heard Douglas talk about how they were really an internationally recognized, branch. There were exiles in that church. There were people from all over the country in that church. They weren't just some sect broke off in the middle of, some whatever place, whatever they played it out. When I was younger, I'm younger than all you guys, I hate to keep, saying that I mean, I'm still on the cusp of whatever you guys know, you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to educate myself, but when I was in school, like, you could go into a high school library and you'd read a book about cults, and you'd see things about, like, David Koresh, and, like, there would never be any fleshed out biographical data. It would be the most overview, like, absolute. Even to me as a 13-year-old with no idea what propaganda means, when I see something that I know isn't like the full story, I think about it. You know, all of that to any person was acknowledged as like a legitimate, we're saying we can affront and destroy and kill people at a whim. And to me, the saddest part of that, which is ultimately the psyop, is that no one said, please stop. There was no, like, national, anyone saying, please stop. I mean, there were people that were saying, do not hurt these people, you know, but
Right.
they still did it. And then they killed anyone that said that it shouldn't have been done. That's the facts of the case. That is widely acknowledged, that they should not have killed those people, and they did kill those people, men, women, and children. There's no denying that. To me, that is a domestic war crime and a crime against humanity to kill infants and women and men who were not prepared to fight back. That is complete war crime to me. I just thought I'd throw that in there.
They did it before. They did it with SLA. They burned them out. And they did it with MOVE in Philadelphia where they burned them. There was women and children and kids, too. They were black. But they burned them. And by the way, those guys also, too, I met them at Yippie headquarters as well. But they burned down the whole neighborhood in Philadelphia.
Right. They burned the Symbionese Liberation Army. They burned the MOVE group. By
the way, SLA also had a connection to Yippie headquarters because the Wellsprings commune hid out the SLA, and they had a connection to Yippie headquarters, and I met them there too.
And they tried to burn Randy Weaver. They were trying to hoist a fuel bladder up in a helicopter, but some reporters saw them.
Yeah.
And there's actually an occult reason why they do that.
Right.
And it's because of they have this reincarnation belief that if they burn their enemies, they can't come back to exact any kind of revenge on them. And it's not a coincidence that they were all burned. They actually...
Absolutely, which is why they cut out the news feed, and I remember this from earlier in the year. I was working. We had it on CNN in the dining room at the restaurant I worked at. I was watching Charles Dorner huddled up in that cabin. They cut the news feed, and then you hear that the place lit on fire. Come on.
Right. They burn their enemies.
Not to condone his actions or anything like that,
cop,
but
right?
it's always the place burns down.
Okay, that guy, listen, that guy had a house here in Vegas, in Rhodes Ranch, and the cops went there and shot up his house with huge bullets, man. They had to be like tear gas canisters or something, because it was huge, giant bullet holes. He wasn't in the house. Okay, the house was empty. They knew it. They busted all the windows, the garage, the front door. They took the front door off. Then they boarded it up. There was pictures of it on the news. You can't find any of these pictures anymore. They shut down the whole entire neighborhood, and when the kids came off the school bus, they wouldn't let the parents in the neighborhood get their kids from the school bus. They went, and the armed cops, SWAT team guys, took the kids from the school bus and walked them to the house, and wouldn't let the parents go out to the school bus.
Sounds like
in regard to that, it is a closed culture among police. When you perceive that one of your own is being attacked, you will do anything to get back at them. That is, I mean, with all respect, that is their culture. You know what I'm saying? Maybe they were
with that, man. But come on, this is way out of line. You're shooting holes through some guy's house, and then it's covered in the media.
But that's like, dude, if something happened to you, Ed, man, I'd be shooting up the person that shot your house. You know what I'm saying? That's like,
right.
And with all respect, I mean, me as being who I am not pro-police at all. I'm just saying, like, put yourself in the average person's mind. You get angry, maybe you had like a beer or two, and you don't know the full facts of the case, you know? But then, you're probably right, dude. They knew exactly what was going on.
Well, it's funny you mentioned law enforcement, and I have a law enforcement officer that lives in the building, and he actually ran up to a car and tried to pull the guy over on off duty in his half of his uniform. Ran up and grabbed the guy's window and said, "Write you a ticket." I mean, they get a little bit on power trips sometimes, for taking the corner a little too fast. And it's funny because he'll be nice to me to an extent, but he always has this thing in the back of his mind, at least it might be my imagination, that he seems like, I don't want to be too nice to him because I think I might have to arrest him one day.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which ties into back into the Beatles with Piggies from the White Album. Isn't it weird that how music promotes this, and culture itself promotes this, be afraid of the police. The police are not your friend. The police are always going to be corrupt. And the police, sometimes in this modern world, more often than not, you hear it more and more in the media that they do not help you. They will hurt you if you step out of line. But culture also promotes that myth. There's no real positive work with your police. You see in modern rap music, me, myself, as a hip-hop musician, you hear a lot of stop snitching, do not cooperate if there's a crime. There's the paranoia between the common man and the police. What do you guys think about, like, the division between police culture and the common populace? Because, in my opinion, like, we should be a lawful, protective society, but we shouldn't abuse that right. Why is it set up so we distrust them? These days, when back in my parents' days, like the county sheriff, like, would pull over a kid and have a beer with him and be like, all right, just be safe, I'll follow you home. Things like that. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I can remember a time when you weren't afraid of the police necessarily.
Yeah, me too.
I can remember situations years ago, in the early 70s. I remember one time I ran out of gas driving up in the Dallas area, and I was walking to a gas station, and this cop pulled over and gave me a ride down to the gas station, then drove me back. And nowadays, I'd be afraid to approach the cops for any reason. They've been so militarized that's changed things a great deal. And this has been a systematic process. It began in the late 60s when there began to be this push for all these police departments to have SWAT teams.
Yep.
That was the beginning. And it has continued to the present day to where police are trained to view the ordinary citizen as the enemy. And they'll do anything to protect the officer's safety, and they'll comply with any cop's order immediately can have any kind of consequence, up to and including execution on the spot. And what's made things especially bad since 9/11 has been with the creation of the Department of Homeland Security funding police departments to the tune of billions and billions of dollars for more and more militarization. And again, also the lowering of standards to the point to where the cops actually do not want applicants for the job who have an IQ over a certain level.
That's absolutely correct.
And what's happening is that the Department of Homeland Security is creating a domestic army, which constitutionally we're not supposed to have. We have posse comitatus to protect us from our own military. But they're getting around that by militarizing the police. And all these incidents that we hear, this epidemic of police brutality, terrible things. Cops here in Texas, and not just Texas, but this is happening in other states as well, but there have been a number of incidents here of state troopers pulling over women driving along and subjecting them to roadside cavity searches.
Yeah.
And which is, that amounts to roadside rape.
Yeah.
And the incidents just go on and on. I can't even keep track of them anymore, where you have cops in schools now. At one time, it was unthinkable. It has all sorts of dire consequences, because supposedly the cops are there to protect the students. But in too many cases, the students need to be protected from the cops. There was a case that happened here in Cedar Spring, Texas, just last week, where a cop, this is a school cop, shows up to break up a fight between two girls. And in the course of this, breaking up this fight, one of the bystanders, a young man about 16, 17 years old, is tasered by this cop. And all the witnesses say there was no reason to taser this boy. That boy, after he was tasered, fell and hit his head, and he has been in a coma now for a couple of weeks, and it's expected that if he survives, he'll have no mental functioning really of any consideration. And these incidents are just the tip of the iceberg. They go on and on and on, where it feels like we're being conditioned to accept these incidents of brutality and to accept that a cop can issue any kind of order, and we are slaves. I mean, we're being trained to live as slaves is what it feels like. It's conditioning to live in a police state.
It definitely is. And everybody, you can see the way they change their driving habits when they see a cop, even in a separate lane than they are. Like the cop's going to come across 3 lanes to pull them over. I mean, just the mentality. If you walk up and try to ask directions, they get jumpy, like you're going to, attack them or something. I've had all kinds of weird incidents. I asked one, my car had been broken into, and all I was doing was walking up and asking, if they could, look into it. And they said, no, that's not what we're here to do. They also issued statements saying, we're not there to protect you. So what is their purpose then? To be revenue collectors to enforce statutes that, for driving infractions? I mean, if you're not there to protect us, you're not there to investigate, robberies and things like that. You're just there to drive around and collect revenue for the municipality or whatever.
Christian, guys, I want to hear an injustice story. Let me tell you a police injustice story that happened to me. All right, I went to school at Eastern Carolina University in Greenville, North Carolina. It's a small town. Not a lot goes down. Occasionally there's a little bit of a thug element. People get wild. We're known for having like a big downtown drunk football culture and things like that. One night I went to a house party where there were some bands playing. I got a little bit tipsy, and I was sitting under a tree in a car park. I saw some cop lights flashing by, and they came up to me. And I said, "Hey, what's going on?" And all of a sudden, guns were pulled. They said, "Do not move. I will shoot you. Do not move. I will shoot you." And I said, whoa. I have no weapons. My name is Joshua Brookshre. Please, I do not want to die. Things like that. And 2 weeks before that, a person at Pitt County Memorial Hospital in the emergency room had walked away from police, and a police officer had shot them in the back. And no one protested that. There was nothing. I mean, it was apparently like a police thing. Like they escorted this guy, and he mouthed off or whatever, and had turned his back and started walking away, and they shot him. And I had that in my mind. And all I remember, it was pitch dark. I could see street lights. There was a flashlight in my face, and I saw but I saw a barrel of a gun, and it looked like the Holland Tunnel to me. You know what I'm saying? Like they literally put a gun on you with the finger on the trigger. You know what I'm saying? And
those are hair triggers.
Reached into the pockets real slow. I pulled out, and I was like, here's my social security card. Like, my name's Josh Brookshre. I live right across the street. I went to a show, like, I'm just trying to, like, have fun, And they said, all right, we're really, really sorry, but there was, like, a fight downtown and someone ran this way. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, do you really, like, someone sitting under a tree, do you think I was the person starting a fight? Like, ridiculous. But that is the militarization of this country. They're ready to kill at any moment. Like, I felt that, like, if I had twitched the wrong way, that would have been the end of me.
Right.
Absolutely.
Sorry to just lay that on there, but it really exists. To this day, I feel that way. If I see, like, a cop even driving the opposite direction of me on the street, I just have that vibe. And that's what they want to create in us, instead of wanting to collaborate and create true social justice. It's the justice that we are handed that we're supposed to accept, which is an incredibly twisted concept to me as a human being, because I don't want to see, like, rape, robbery, or murder. My little brother was robbed at his store last Sunday. Someone walked in, took $500, like, with a gun on the hip, didn't point the gun at anybody. And the police questioned him like he maybe thought it was an inside job, and he was just like, I work at a restaurant. Like, are you kidding me? Some guy walked in the door. And I'm not even kidding. The police these days are ridiculous. They probably were less corrupt in the 90s, but with my parents' generation, you guys' generation, my mother herself is 54 years old. She said that she went to school with her sheriff's son, and her sheriff's son knew that he would drink and sit in the cornfields and things like that. They just watch the road for dangerous things. But these days, it's like everyone is guilty before proven innocent. Everything is a suspicion. You always have to have a weapon in your car. You always have to be, like, trying to smuggle drugs or, like, trying to, like, do something illegal. Cops, that's what they want us to think. And it's a weird society. The police really should be our friends. We should all be, like, creating a safe society, but they want us to believe we're the bad people. I don't know. I just thought I'd lay that rant on there because it's an incredibly touchy subject to me.
Mm-hmm. No, I remember a guy saying, I think it might have been David Icke, and a female police officer over in England on one of his videos walked up and he said, what are you going to tell your daughter when, the full police state is implemented? When she says, Mommy, what were you doing when the police state came into existence? And what are you going to say? I was helping police it into existence?
Hey guys, I gotta get to bed.
Yeah, it's getting late. All I'll say is I'm not any judge or policeman of my fellow man. You know what I'm saying? This has been an amazing discussion. I hope you taped everything, Ed.
Oh, no, yeah, we're recording up until this moment, yeah.
Wow, this has really been gold. Everybody's really contributed hard to this one. This is going to be good, man.
Yeah, really good. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it.
Let me know.
Yo, Christian, add me on Facebook, man.
Wait,
yeah.
Mack, what you saying?
What?
What are you saying, Mack?
I was going to say, let me know when the podcast of all this is up.
Oh, well, Mack, we already went out live. You know that, right? And the YouTube will go up. There's an archive on the station, then YouTube goes up, and we're all over the place, man. Spreaker everywhere.
Okay, good. So, I'll check YouTube.
Yeah.
That's okay. But I'll tell you what, we've really covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
So much.
Which is what is amazing about this, because ultimately the Beatles really do represent our generation. Like, even me as a 26-year-old, listening to the White Album last night driving back from a show, like, at 3 a.m., like, are you kidding me? Like, how can you say this isn't our generation's, like, classical music? And, like, but there's so much tied into it, and it really touches every aspect of popular culture, from class struggle to the police state to the fact that the government hides secrets from us to everything is magical and you can touch into a vein. light things up. This has been an amazing show. Like, really, like, I called in cold. We've had an amazing conversation, you guys. I hope everyone has a blessed evening.
Well, you too. It has been great. I look forward to talking again soon.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. The whole chat room was really fascinated with you there, Max, so we'll definitely have you back. And Chris and Josh, thank you again for, coming in all the time. And,
Awesome.
And, we got a whole bunch of shows coming up in the future. All different kinds of topics, so we'll get everything on record, all right, guys?
Sounds
Ed,
good.
we're going to blow this show out of the park if you ever get the Bookhouse on, man. We're really going to blow it out of the park.
Definitely.
But God bless you guys. Everyone have a wonderful evening. I look forward to seeing this recording on YouTube. You stay good, Ed, man. Thanks for having us on the Opperman Report.
Good night. Well, no, tonight was Firing Lines. Okay, it wasn't my show.
Good night, everybody.
Hi, guys.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Great meeting you all.
Thank you, Mac.